very up my alley. It's got my name on it. Not
Right.
literally.
No, you're not that good. What?
Happy New Comic Book Day, geeks, and welcome to the Script Heroes podcast,
where we bring you comic news, book reviews, and industry blues. My name is Joseph Jasionowski, and I'm the writer of Janitor Hero, Cutting Carly, and the Cryptoverse.
And I'm Katie Marcum, scripter of the Rusty Robot Country Club and ghostwriter extraordinaire. Today we're talking about our polls for the week, including Outsiders #1, Lotus Land #1, and issue 5 of World's Finest Teen Titans. Our back issue deep dive for the episode will be Radiant Black Volume 1, Not So Secret Origin. If you like what you hear here today, subscribe to Script Heroes wherever you get your podcasts.
And you can follow the pod on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube, all at Script Heroes Pod, to join the conversation. Or you can find my personal socials at JJAZ1111.
And I'm on all the socials at Katie Marcum Pro.
And now for the news. So our first piece of news is coming at us from ICV2, and it's been corroborated by multiple other sources. We've learned that Amazon is shutting down the Comixology app. It will be merging with the Kindle app on December 4th, 2023. All books purchased from Comixology will automatically transfer over to Kindle, and the Comixology URL will still be active for digital comic purchases, but there will just be no app or reader functionality.
I mean, that doesn't feel like that big of a change, frankly. Like, the fact that you already can't buy books in the Comixology app kind of made it really useless for the past, year, 6 months as it is.
Absolutely. It feels like this is like the third different version of Comixology is shutting down that has happened, because Amazon won't ditch the branding of it, but they seemingly want to just completely destroy any sort of functionality within it.
Yeah, I guess this is them ditching the branding finally.
No.
Which frankly is nice.
URL is still going to be active for digital comic purchases, so the branding's still there. It's just the reader functionality in the app is dead.
So are you able to purchase comics through the Kindle app now?
I don't think so. I think you can purchase comics through like the greater Amazon marketplace with a Comixology URL, but you can just only read it through the Kindle reader. That's the way that I'm...
Okay, that's a little absurd then.
It's very strange and overly complicated, but that is the way that I'm reading the news.
Well, that is, just another ding on the poor digital comic space, and another reason that I really don't buy them that often.
I'm actually going to plug later during our poll list a great app, I think, for reading digital comics, but Comixology isn't
teaser.
this Comixology isn't it anymore, so I think people should move on from Comixology.
And move on from this story.
Okay, so this is kind of a similar-ish topic. We're talking about another sort of publishing sub-label, but I think you're going to be a little more interested.
I think I have a guess.
Okay.
Is this about Vertigo coming back?
It is!
I am so thrilled you're right. Go on, give us our read.
Yeah, so it's been a few years since DC shuttered down the Vertigo imprint completely. Black Label kind of stepped up into its place, but it operates with a very different focus on short-run miniseries and a lack of creator-owned books. But Bleeding Cool has reported that coming out of the Thought Bubble Comic-Con, there's a feeling amongst industry professionals that Vertigo is in the early stages of making a grand return. So I'm wondering, Katie, how you feel about this. Do you think it's going to impact Black Label in a big way? And do you prefer one of Vertigo or Black Label?
I mean, I've been a big fan of what Black Label has done pretty much since it launched. I think that kind of stepping up into that, okay, these are not like comics for kids space was a really good idea, to be like, all right, now we can kind of fearlessly do creepier, weirder things. I enjoy Black Label. I'm not a fan of like the prestige issue format. It's a little big for me. It doesn't fit in my short boxes or on my bookshelves.
That's a super fair and valid concern. I
Right.
enjoy the bigger format, but I get the issues with like putting it somewhere and knowing what the hell to do with it.
Yeah. I would hope that Vertigo wouldn't replace Black Label, because I do think that Black Label has its own space carved out there. What you touched on with a lack of creator-owned books, I would love that to be what we get from Vertigo, is creator-owned books in the DC universe. Kind of like what we see with, Constantine or I'm sorry, Constantine and Swamp Thing and all of them showing up in the universe while not really being a part of the main DC universe.
Yeah, I think that tracks a lot, and I would venture to bet the Vertigo is going to be somewhat creator own focused, but I'm more interested in like the sense of like some longer running stuff. I love miniseries, and I love what Black Label's doing with miniseries, but some stuff that
Mhm.
can get some legs to really go some places would be really cool. I actually wouldn't be surprised if Black Label became like a sub category of Vertigo or vice versa, like if they're connected
Interesting.
in some way. That is not at all in the article. That is completely like a personal,
Mhm.
thing that I am thinking could happen because they do operate in a very similar space. And I feel like DC operating both completely independently might be kind of tough.
That's fair. I do think that DC Black Label, I mean, I am such a sucker for that branding as is. Like the kind of fancy whiskey of comic books. I love it so much. I think it's a really strong, like, brand name. Uh, so I hope that they don't converge. I hope the Vertigo gets to be its own thing again. And like you said, that we see longer running series that, are creator owned.
Okay, well, I love getting your input on that, but I think it's time for our next news story today. All right, next up, we have a new series announcement coming straight from DC in a press release. And seeing as the two of us both love Super Sons, I think this is going to be very interesting for both of us. So, DC has announced Sinister Sons, the offspring of General Zod and Sinestro, get their own series this February. Writer Peter J. Tomasi unforgettably captured the fun and action of young superheroes joining forces in DC's fan-favorite Super Sons series. This February, Tomasi returns to the world of DC youth once more, this time with artist David LaFonte and the sons of two of DC's most infamous supervillains in Sinister Sons. When the Lord Zod, son of General Zod, was cast off of his adopted homeworld of New Kandor, he runs afoul of a kid on a mission, the son of Sinestro, Sin Son. So this is going to be arriving in February 13th, 2024, and this spins out of Wayward Son, which is a backup in the current Green Lantern series, basically introducing this new son of Sinestro, but it's very ambiguous as to if he's actually the son of Sinestro, if he just believes that he is. He's kind of obsessed with Sinestro. He's trying to get a sample of Sinestro's blood to prove that he is Sinestro's son. And that is kind of, I think, the starting point for this, and I'm very excited. I'm interested to hear what you have to say.
I mean, first off, speaking directly to Sin Sun, a hair follicle is so much easier than blood. Like, come on, man. Uh, but oh my god, this is thrilling. I loved the Super Sons run so much. I think that Tomasi really just hit that relationship dynamic so much. Like, literally, the carrying force of that book was the relationship between Damien and John. And if he can strike lightning twice, oh my gosh, I will be so thrilled. I am incredibly excited about this.
Well, what I'll tell you is it's the same team on the backup story, and that has been phenomenal through the two issues that it was in. So I do think that this is going to be very interesting and very fun. I'm super excited. I think a lot of people will be timid about the idea of Sinestro having.
I'm sinister excited.
Yeah. But I think I think a lot of people might be timid about the idea of Sinestro having another child. His daughter's obviously a large character now running the Sinestro Corps, but I'm gonna preface that by saying I would be willing to bet this is not actually his son. Like it really feels like they're setting it up to be like he believes he's his son. Maybe Sinestro's going to take advantage of him through that, but I don't think that's really the case. He was left at like this space orphanage by his mom, so he doesn't really have memories of a father or whatever. So I think he's conjured this, but he's a very fun character. I've really enjoyed it so far. And I think I don't know if Lord Zod's been in anything, the son of General Zod, don't know him, but I think that this.
I don't know him either. Oh my gosh, I am thrilled about this. I will say I don't know that I recognize that artist's name because I think it's Patrick Gleason who did a lot of the Super Sons run. And oh my gosh, did I love his art on that. I think he captured like the kind of gangly kids with just floppy hair so well. It was adorable, and I think that that really brought a lot of emotion to the characters. Do we know any of the credits
Yeah,
of
I'm
this
grabbing this
artist?
right now if I can find anything. Like I did say, the Levante did work on the backup series, on the
Mhm.
backup story, which was great. Okay, it looks like did some work on Ultimate Spider-Man. doing work
That's a
on
good sign.
Spider-Man, Superman, Harley Quinn, and Radiant Red. Um,
Oh,
so
relevant.
yeah, so
I think that I'm especially thrilled to hear that he had worked on Spider Books because, you know, Spider Books have that kind of emotive charm. Like just looking at the spider mask, those big eyes can be so emotive. And I think that a good Spider Man uh, artist really leans into that.
I'm looking
So
at
I've got high hopes for this guy.
yeah, I'm looking at like the cover art and like the variant cover and stuff, and man, these two characters have a really fun look and a fun dynamic. I really like Sinsa. The main cover is, and I don't know how he's gonna get this, but he's wearing two Sinestro Core rings on each hand, and they're massive, and
Ooh,
it's really cool.
absolutely blinged out.
Yeah, because in the backup story, he doesn't have a Sinestro Core ring, as you would be like, how the hell does he have one? He
Right.
wears a
Yeah.
yellow like knuckle duster with electricity that he made, and it's really freaking cool. But he's
Honestly, that's
screw
pretty
up,
rad as well.
which is really funny. Like he keeps screwing things up. His orphanage like leader makes them all steal stuff, like steal money for him, and kind of Sin Sun had a, a canister of it all blown up as he was escaping with it, and poor little guy.
Well, hopefully that is a sign of the shenanigans to come with this new series, because you gotta imagine it's gonna be funny. You gotta imagine it's gonna be charming. I mean, with Tomasi on the script, we're not gonna get anything but that.
Absolutely, and I don't want to be a little bit presumptuous, but I think I can assure our readers that this will be on our poll list for when it comes out.
Speaking of, what a perfect transition, let's head to our weekly polls.
Let's do it.
This week on the poll list rec, we're going to be discussing Outsiders #1, Lotus Land #1, and World's Finest Teen Titans #5. But those aren't the only books that we've read this week. I also picked up a copy of Howie the Hellhound from Scout Comics. I think that it came out a week or two ago, but I only just got a copy of it in my shop today. And I also grabbed Coda #3, which is a rad fantasy series that I've been reading. What about you, Jay? What'd you pick
I
up?
got quite a little bit this week. I got Crusader #3 from Mad Cave, Daredevil #3, Green Lantern #5, Something Epic #7 from Image, which is a phenomenal series, Superman Lost #8, and yeah, that is everything.
Well, of the ones we're going to
Yeah,
discuss, I know that we like to go publisher by publisher.
yeah.
So my thought would be, and hear me out, Teen Titans. Then we jump to the #1
And we
of
talk about Outsiders.
Outsiders,
All right.
and then the #1 of Lotus
Lotus
Land.
Land. I am fully down for that. I think that sounds like a good plan. So let's start off with World's Finest Teen Titans. Okay, starting off with a summary for World's Finest Teen Titans #5. It all goes haywire. Robin's reeling after a battle against Haywire's anti-Titans doesn't go as planned, and a confrontation with his biggest stand, Kid Flash, reveals how much Batman's protege really feels about his role as a leader. Robin sees he must make a big move to earn back his teammates' trust. So this book is coming at us with Mark Waid as the writer, Emanuela Lapuccino as the artist. The colorist is Jordi Belair, and the letterer is Steve Wands. Some credits for the creative team. Mark Waid, I don't know if we really need to get into his credits, but he's obviously worked on Kingdom Come, JLA, and he's currently writing World's Finest and Shazam. Lapuccino has done plenty of notable work at the big two as well, including Wonder Woman, X Factor, and Supergirl. So this is basically an all-star creative team, really, writing a book that I think, or working on a book that I think we both really enjoy.
Oh yeah, I mean, this has been consistently one of my favorite books that we've pulled together. It's so right up my alley. I mean, our entire friendship is built on a foundation of how much we love the Titans and Teen Titans. It's so rad. I've had fun with every single issue.
Yeah, and the cover's awesome. It's if you're not watching on a visual platform, it is Batman telling Robin he's grounded, which is just a fun time.
We love a looming Batman. Like I always think of that Stephanie Brown panel when I don't remember. I think it was during like Detective Comics or something. She like stole information about the family, and when Batman can completely silhouette his protege,
Yeah,
it's so menacing. It's so great.
yeah. Well, this book was a lot of fun. Might even be my, not to get too ahead of myself, might be my favorite issue of World's Finest Teen Titans so far. I did really enjoy this
Ooh,
one. I enjoyed a lot of the other
here's
ones.
the thing. I think I agree with you.
Yeah, this was a really good one. We're really starting to get into the meat of this series. And this series has had a lot of great character work, a lot of great character dynamics, but we're getting into the meat of the plot now, which is awesome.
Oh yeah, and I mean, I think the character dynamics are like it might seem like a bit late in the series for issue 5 to be getting into the plot, but I think the character dynamics and the character relationships are really what sells this book. It's all about how these characters interact, how they feel about each other, who they are as people, and I think this issue in particular is so amazing with that because it's just Mark Waid just sniping each and every one of them. He's like, all right, here's a weak spot in this relationship. Let's turn it into a chasm.
And
Here's an insecurity or a weakness that a character has. Let's exploit that to its fullest. It's so good at just dissecting these kids.
absolutely, and I think that that's a real credit to Mark Waid. Really, when it comes to team books, I have to say that I do really think that Mark Waid is the greatest to ever do.
The greatest to ever do it.
So you mock me, but I think it's true. Between JLA and this, he's so good at that team dynamic. He's so good at writing that kind of stuff. Dick and Donna had some awesome interaction in this issue, and then the big thing is,
Mm-hmm.
you know, we hear in the summary, Haywire's. It says Anti Titans in the summary, but I'm pretty sure they were called the Terror Titans in the issue.
Mm-hmm.
They kind of, after their interaction with the Titans are having a big argument, and it's phenomenally well done. And when Dick delivers the line, grow the hell up, to Wally, that is,
Oh, it broke my little heart. Oh my god. Yeah, I think one of the great things about this book is that it has this argument that the Titans are having. They're all having it in different ways, though. Like, it's not that they're fighting about one thing, it's that every seam of this team is splitting apart. To look at another Mark Waid book that we've read together, Tower of Babel, we of course see a schism in the Justice League where they're kind of on two sides. There's really just no one on the same side
no,
in this
no,
book.
this is just opposition. Even like Donna and Garth are getting, are getting into it. Like it's just brutal, and yeah, there's so much cool stuff, and I do want to give some love to the art, which looks really great
Hmm.
all the way throughout. There's a dragon breathing fire at one point, like this big purple dragon. Gorgeous,
Right?
gorgeous.
I think this is the first of Emanuela Lupacino's books that I've read, and she has just become immediately a household name for me. This is just a fast favorite art style and artist.
I absolutely just I couldn't agree more. It's just such phenomenal art all the way through. There's a moment where like Robin's shadow is Batman, and
Yeah.
so good. Great use of silhouette. It's amazing. I don't know if you have any like gripes you want to talk about first before we lead into our ratings, but that's basically everything I have to say about this issue.
I mean, my only gripe, and I say this knowing that it's not even truly a gripe, it's not a book that you can just pick up having not read any of the rest of the series. Like, it's issue 5. We're about to get to the climax of the book. You wouldn't expect it to be, but I do think that it has so much context dependent action happening because so much of it is based on how the team has been slowly unraveling over the 5 issues. So that would be literally my only gripe with it, and even that's just
Yeah, no, that
read the whole thing.
that's fair. That's kind of become a thing in comics in general. They're not as much jump onable, which is unfortunate.
Mhm.
But I do agree with you that I think this issue is particularly true of that. I want to get into my rating here right away. I give this a 9 out of 10. Like I said, I think it's my favorite book from World's Finest Teen Titans so far. It's
Mhm.
awesome all the way around. I would definitely recommend this, Paul.
I gave it a 9.5 out of 10.
Oh,
Uh, I know, I know. I was so close to giving it a 10 out of 10 that I was like, I guess there is a bit to be said about it not being able to be something that you can jump into. Uh, and actually, because of that, I'm not going to call this issue a pull list rec
ooh,
for this week.
okay,
I think you need to get the entire series before this is a book that you can just blindly pick up.
okay, that's fair, fair. Okay, let's move on to our next book.
All right, we also read Outsiders #1 this week. This is coming to us from creative team Jackson Lansing and Colin Kelly with art from Robert Carey. You may recognize Lansing and Kelly from their work on, and I know Jay is a fan of this, Batman Beyond, Neo Year, and Neo Gothic. And Carey has worked on James Bond and some Aliens comics. The Outsiders is the return of comic book archaeology, digging into all the forgotten corners of DC's history to preserve, record, and better understand the true nature of the DC multiverse and the forgotten stories that make up its fabric. Using his fortune, Luke Fox launches a new organization dedicated to shining light into the world's darkest corners, and just wait until you learn what universe-shattering secret they've discovered buried under Antarctica.
Man,
So, Jay, how did you
what
feel
an
about
epic
Outsiders?
summary for a book that didn't have that epic vibe to it. Um, and that's not. Let me start by saying that this writing team, I absolutely love their work on Neo Year. Need to still read Neo Gothic, but I love their work on Neo Year. So this isn't an indictment of the creative team as a whole. But
Mhm.
I feel like this issue just it's got a great pace. I'll give them that. But because that pace, I feel like they don't really
Yes.
take time to really explain to us what's going on. And not that I need my hand held, but there's a
Mhm.
lot going on. It's just kind of thrown at us, and I don't really know what's happening. The art is really good at points in terms of motion and action, but the faces throw me off a little
Mhm.
bit in that they all feel like they're rendered differently. Kate's got very flat, not a lot of line work in her face. Then Luke Fox's face is just super detailed and like rendered a lot. And then the drummer, this new character, I think is supposed to look old, but she just has her face covered in like what looks to be these like really thick lines.
Yeah, I want to jump at a couple things you said. The first of which is that the drummer actually not a new character. She's a part of Planetary from Wildstorm. So I think that's one of our things that in the DC history that's being dug up is this
That's
character. Um, and I hear you about the faces. I wasn't personally bothered by it. I think the eyes were a little rough in some places, but it wasn't anything that really distracted me. I was a big fan of Carrie's art in this book. I think you hit it on the head with the action. There's one sequence in particular where we're getting introduced to Kate, and we have that kind of gunfire lit uh, fight situation that is so now emblematic of Batman, and seeing it on a comic page where it's so well done was just great. I do wish that we got to see more of Luke's suit kind of morphing onto him. It seems to be some sort of nanobite situation, and I think that's going to be some really awesome visuals going forward in the book. But for now, it's been kind of relegated to the background. So there were definitely some hiccups in the art, but I actually found it to be stronger than the writing in this book.
it's I felt like both of them were the things of like I got what they were going for, and there's definitely good stuff there, but both of them had hiccups for me that kind of took away from the book as a whole.
Mhm.
I think the overarching plot seems like it's going to be interesting, but just,
Oh
we
yeah.
moved fast in this, and yet it didn't feel like we really accomplished much, if that makes sense. Um,
It does. My kind of thesis with this book is that it felt like an issue zero rather than an issue one. Like it's doing a lot of setup for us without a lot of story
which is
happening
fair, but
now.
even on that front, like an issue zero is a marketing term. Like it's still an issue one. Like you
I
want
mean, yeah, but
like
it sets your
if this was written in
expectations
issue zero,
differently.
I'd have the same exact. Like for me, that doesn't really change the perspective of it because that's just an issue one with a different marketing term. Honestly, like it's the first issue either way. So it's really just to me like I don't know. There's some cool stuff. I want to give a shout out to the lettering because I think the lettering is actually phenomenal in this book. I think that's the best thing in this book.
Mhm,
There's some great captions on the first page that get their own panels, which is really cool. I really do like the lettering overall in
mhm.
this. And yeah, there's some good art moments. I think that there's strong characterization in the sense of I kind of get what they're going for each character and their role in this book. But yeah,
No, that's fair. I'm going to push back a little on the characterization, just because a lot of it felt kind of like the writer's voice coming through instead of the character's voice coming through. If that makes
that,
sense.
that's fair.
Like Kate was given a lot of jokes that I feel like aren't really her vibe, and it's just like, oh, this will sound good
Which is
here.
fair. I'm not overly familiar with this cast from previous things, so I can't make a thing on whether or not it's accurate to their character as a whole. But I do think the three of them had very distinctive characters in this book. So I'm going to push a little bit back that it's the author's voice, because then they would all sound the same, which they don't.
I mean, fair enough. We don't have to agree on everything. Do we want to hop into our ratings
Absolutely.
to see how we
Yeah.
disagree
I
there?
I think this book is on a whole fine. I think maybe if you're a Kate Kane fan or you're a Luke Fox fan or you're a fan of weird team ups like this might be something you're interested in. It's not really going to be a full wreck from me. I'm going to give it a 5 out of 10, like a bang average ish, in my
Mm,
opinion.
that's totally fair. I'm going to drop it to a 4 out of 10. I thought there were some more issues in the writing, but overall, fine. I'm not going to put it on my pull list rec for the week,
Very
though.
fair. Do we want to move on to the next book for the week and sleeve up?
Let's hop
Outsiders.
into it.
Okay, so Lotus Land was our first non-DC pull for the week, and the summary is: in a Vancouver of the future painted with ultra-modern decay, a groundbreaking advancement in technology promises an end to the entropy itself. But when an attack on this mysterious Keeper program threatens the lives of everyone tied to it, retired police detective Benny Streichman is called in to investigate one last case. This is coming at us from the creative team of Darcy Van Polgeest, Polgeest, who worked on Little Bird, an Eisner-winning writer, by the way, and joined by an artist named Keo Felipe, who's worked on Stranger Things, Tales from Hawkins, and has also done some inking work on the current Nightwing run.
Yeah.
The colorist is Patricio Del Pecci. I am so sorry if I butchered any of these names here. These are new creators. Their names haven't really been in many interviews to check the pronunciation, so feel free to insult me if I pronounced it wrong.
Or just lightly correct.
So how'd you feel about this book, Katie?
I enjoyed it. I think it's very intriguing. That's the word that I landed on for my feelings. I'm very intrigued by the story. I'm intrigued by the world. Uh, I found the characters, specifically our main character, to be kind of the least interesting element of the world, whereas the stuff going on around him was much more interesting to me. Um, I really liked the art, and that's kind of what I want to focus on first, because there are a lot of very cool and creatively done panels. There are a lot of these kind of like eyeline shots of characters that I think are pretty cool to see. They really break up the page and lend a lot of drama and emotion. The way that at one point someone leaves a conversation while someone's on a phone call and it's not addressed in the panel, but we kind of see all of these emotions happening as she's walking away. I think that was super well done. And there's even like the super cute creative panel where someone's turning off a lamp and there's the SFX for it, a click down the middle.
Yeah,
And on one side it's lit and on the other side it's not. So I think there's just a lot of like little detail creative
no,
things that went a long way in this book.
absolutely. The art is phenomenal in this book. I really think it sets the tone of this world perfectly. You mentioned some
Hmm.
cool things with panels. There's like floating inset panels at points. There's like one of a
Yeah.
bird on like the first or second page. It's so
Hmm.
good. I love the way the main character is drawn. Like he's this big hulking figure that's often in shadow. Really like it. I think intriguing is a great world. They pulled me in the sense of like, however I felt about this, I am interested in this world. I'm interested in what's going to happen. It's
Hmm.
really interesting from that perspective. It's I think a new kind of take on this kind of I guess sort of dystopian world.
Oh, certainly dystopian.
They call it ultra modern, which is interesting, and I like that
Yeah.
for it. But yeah, I think that's really solid. I think the world building is really good in it. I'm gonna push a little bit back on the main character not being interesting. I was pretty interested in him. He had that weird like vision thing at one point when he checked on the guy. That was really cool. And my biggest thing is it's a father-son story, I believe. That's what we're going into. And that's one of my
Hmm.
favorite things in comics, Walking Dead being the obvious example. But father-son stories work really well in comics.
Oh yeah. And I noted that his motivation is really interesting to me.
Hmm.
Um, like I think that it is interesting seeing Benny the father versus Benny the they're like kind of cop nickname for him is Magic Hands.
Yeah.
So we have this almost different character. And I liked our first Benny, like Benny the Bird Watcher. I thought was very cool. But then once he kind of fell into the rhythm of the city, I was a little turned off by him. And I was a little turned off by his powers. I kind of wish we had more of a differentiation or understanding of what is kind of the magic of technology and what is just like supernatural, because this felt very
I
supernatural.
think it is, and like they call 'em magic hands, so I'm assuming that that is it. But I do agree with you
Mhm.
that it maybe is a little bit confusing and hard to, you know, pin that down exactly. But yeah, overall, I really did enjoy the character. I thought the dialogue was really good. That first
Mhm.
scene where kind of the other like cops come to Benny and like they have that conversation in front of his son, really well done. Um,
Definitely.
is there anything else you wanted to touch
Um,
on here? Or?
No, I don't think so. I'm gonna give this kind of bang on in the middle. I thought it was a good first issue. It intrigued me. I'm giving it a 5.5 out of 10.
Wow. Okay, I'm gonna disagree with you on a little bit. You didn't actually say though if it's a recommend from you.
Um, I it's I hate to go 3 for 3, but it's not gonna be a wreck from me. It's not something that I feel like really needed, to jump off the shelf into your hands.
Okay, I'm going to give this a 7.5 out of 10, and I am going to give it a pull list rec. I think this is a good indie pickup, if not just for the art alone, but for the art, the world, the tone, and the characters, and I see a good series coming out of this, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm excited to see what, happens going forward. Maybe one of those will get my rec.
Yeah. All right. And that's all of our polls for the week, so it's time to move over to our back issue review.
All right, welcome back to the back issue review. This week we're going to be talking about Radiant Black Volume 1, Not So Secret Origin.
Prepare for
Radiant Black.
spoilers in this summary. If you have not read it so far and you want to avoid spoilers, maybe move on to our next segment.
Radiant Black is the not-so-secret origin of Nathan Burnett and his transformation from negative 38,486 to hero. After moving from his big city dreams in LA back to his hometown and his parents' house, Nathan encounters a black hole that gives him superheroic control over gravity itself. The same mental blocks that froze him in his writing career paralyze him as a superhero, and it takes the encouragement of his childhood best friend Marshall, as well as the looming threat of Radiant Red, to push him into a more active role in his own life. Only for that to kill him, or at least put him in a coma. In a quest for revenge, Marshall takes on the mantle and confronts Radiant Red, only for the fight to turn cosmic as Radiant Pink and Radiant Yellow arrive just ahead of the Radiant itself, a cosmic entity seeking to take back the powers from all of them. Radiant Black heads the massive verse from Image Comics, a whole superhero sphere created by Kyle Higgins. The art for Volume 1 comes to us courtesy of Marcello Costa and Eduardo Ferrigato, and Issue 6, a one-shot of Radiant Red, is from writer Cherish Chen, with art from David LaFuente. Letters for the whole volume are from Becca Carey.
Great summary there, Katie, and it is quite a big creative team on the first volume, so good job there. And La Fuente coming back from when we talked about Sinister Sons earlier.
Yeah.
So, yeah, great to see his work again. This is my first time reading Radiant Black, so I was completely unaware of that, and it was a very pleasant surprise. But yeah, this was
if you've listened to our introduction, you probably will guess that I've read it based on who Nathan is as a character.
So yeah, just to talk about this book a little bit, I was very surprised getting into it. The only thing I've read in the Massiverse is No One. I've been reading No One, which is phenomenal, but it's so different. So I was expecting something kind of like No One that was very unique and tonally different from most books. And then I got into this, I was like, oh, this is a traditional superhero story, which is really weird to see from a non-Big Two company. And I was just very surprised to see that, because most superhero stories that aren't from the Big Two, if they're going to do it at all, which they don't a lot of time, it has some angle. The father's evil, there's all this corruption and greed in the superheroes, or there's like this political drama or whatever. Like,
Superman's evil now.
Yeah. So it was very weird to see a story that isn't trying to reinvent the wheel, but like is just a solid wheel, if that makes sense. And I was like, wow, they're really just trying to beat DC and Marvel at their own game, which is like, you have to have some balls to do that in the current comic book industry. But then,
or some black holes.
Yeah, some black holes. But then obviously Nathan ends up dying, which changes the game a little bit, but it doesn't really.
He's in a coma.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. He goes into a coma. But it doesn't like completely shift the tone away from being this more traditional superhero story. So yeah, I think it's just really a solid concept and easy to follow, but then it has the added stakes of like, this is a traditional superhero story, but everything actually matters because look, our main character got absolutely destroyed in issue 4. So yeah, that's really that was my main takeaway, is like just a solid wheel, not a reinvention, but just a really good, which is perfectly fine. I think too many creators now are like, need to completely reinvent everything. Just do something well.
Right? And I think something that I really like about this is that, yes, it's a very kind of traditional superhero story, and it pokes fun at itself a few times for this. It's got such strong, like, Saturday morning cartoon energy, like, between the way that they illustrate the transformations into the different Radiants to even just, I don't know, the essentially Power Rangers with their different colors. It's so cool. I think that they really achieve what they're going for, and it's such a fun thing to be going for. Is this kind of Saturday morning vibe?
Absolutely, it's very Power Ranger. Correct me if I'm wrong. Has Kyle Higgins worked on Power Rangers? I thought I saw that.
I don't know. I primarily know him from his work on Nightwing, and I think he wrote Gates of Gotham.
Gotcha. I thought I had seen that somewhere. I could be completely wrong, so I apologize if that's incorrect information, but I thought I'd seen that, and that makes sense with obviously the way that the story works. But
Yeah, I mean, there's even a page where Marshall, who we'll hop into in a second, is brainstorming names for Radiant Black, and it says Mighty Morphin Lawsuit on the page. I'm like, that's cute. That's clever. I like that.
no, there's a lot of fun with that. And it's I'm interested because I do we want to kind of move into a couple of the criticism before we get into the really good stuff? I don't know because I you kind of
I'm
into one slight criticism. I'm kind of half
mhm.
on because I can't tell sometimes if it's meant to be satire or if it's just the right like because there's moments where it's like they figure everything out really easily. You know, it's like, what if
Mhm.
you tried this? Oh, it works. What if you tried
Yeah.
this? Oh, it works. So I can't tell if that's meant to be like a little bit of a satire, fun play on the way that superhero stories work a lot of the time, or if it's more of just like, no, we're just gonna let them figure everything out. So that's a slight criticism of like everything just works. Everything Marshall
That's
tells them
fair,
about like try this, try using your emotion. Can you take off the helmet if you concentrate on it? Like it
right?
all works.
Even down to him being like, "Oh, Radiant Red, I see that you absorbed matter." Like, you
Yeah.
saw what?
Yeah, that's the other. There's a lot where like they explain something in their reaction. I'm like, that was not clear in what just
Mhm.
happened. You know, like they have the moment where like they're like, did those cops just threaten us? And it was like, I think they did. I went, they did? Where's? I did not see that.
Yeah, there were a few instances of that, and that kind of brings me to what I think my biggest gripe with the book was. Uh, I mean, I like the book a lot, and I like this part of the book a lot. I think that the kind of harkening back to what we talked about in issue 0 about Noctera, the plot of superheroes saving the world and the plot of Nathan like making it as a writer are put next to each other. Like, there's a whole issue that's called Writing Day that's just Nathan trying to write.
Which is a writer I love. That was
Oh
so
yeah, 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 yeah.
writer for
I definitely want to
so
deep dive into that issue, but I feel like they really kind of lost a lot of what I wanted from the superhero side of things by focusing so heavily in a number of parts on the Nathan writing side of things. I don't know that they struck that balance as well as I would have
I,
wanted them
I
to.
agree. And just a quick shout, check out issue 0 if you want to see that Noctera deep dive that Katie mentioned
Yes.
really quickly. But you actually hit because my main criticism, kind of tangential to that, but very similar, is that the plot moves very slowly at times.
Yep.
The first issue, a lot of great stuff. The first and second issue, I'll say, I'll lump them together.
Mhm.
A lot of great stuff. The dynamic with the father and the parents in general is phenomenal. I actually really love the father. It reminds me of
Right?
my own father in like the
Oh.
sense of becoming right and like his react. And I love like the extra raisins for you, but feels very real. The characters are all very
Mhm.
interesting and well written.
And the relationships, I want to
Yes,
say, just to cut
yes.
in there, the relationships are so
No,
well
no, you hit
done.
the nail on the head. That's absolutely the thing that makes the characters so great is the relationships between them. But the plot just sometimes takes a backseat, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it does sometimes mean like, okay, we're gonna really kind of chug along with this. Like, we don't get a like Nate training bit until the issue, like the beginning of the issue that he dies in. Like it's
Yeah.
like we start with him and then
Goes into a coma.
sorry, he's
He's got to come back.
okay, but he's basically fucking dead, and
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
he had a really fun, but I do want to talk about that. Well, let's stay with the criticism, but I do want to talk
Yeah.
about the scene of him dying when we get to the positives because
Yes.
maybe the best scene in the entire series or volume.
But I'm sorry, circling back to what you're saying, I think that not to be like too writer brain about it, but you have your plot and you have your story. And I feel like I'm not sure what the story of volume 1 is. Is the story of volume 1 Nate trying to uh Nate trying to become a better writer? Is it Nate trying to find himself? And I suppose if we're saying that it's Nate trying to find himself, then in the moment where the building falls and he, saves everyone holding the building up, only to, sacrifice himself for this. Then I suppose we did it, but then we also have then two extraneous issues that aren't about the story. And if the story is about him becoming radiant black and the kind of story of the cosmic entities, and I've been calling them the cosmic entities. I don't know that we have
Radiance? I don't know.
well, the radiant is
I don't know.
in any case, if the story is the superhero side of things, then we lost so much of the time that we should have been spending on that story to essentially the B plot. So I wish there was more definitive ness, I suppose, for which one is what we're supposed to be focusing on.
No, I fully agree with you on that. I think that's very true in kind of one of the gripes I have with the book. And it harkens to the A plot versus B plot discussion, which you can see the creative corner of our previous episode if you want to kind of hear us talk about that from a writing perspective. But I'm kind of with you. I feel like it's this whole question of killing or comating Nathan and what that does to the story, because yes, add stakes. Yes, the scene was phenomenal. Yes, it makes Marshall a little bit more interesting that now he has this retribution idea, but it does a couple other things in the negative column of well, we've been building Nathan's story up to this point. So now what is the first volume about when in issue 4 out of 6 or 4 out of 5 really that focus on this narrative, he just gets yeeted? What does that do to the story? And then the backup or the backing thing of that is I just don't think Marshall's as interesting a protagonist. So I think you're
oh my gosh, I would love to talk about how much I dislike Marshall.
I think Marshall's a piece of shit, and that is
the thing is I don't think you're supposed to like Marshall at first.
I think that's the vibe, and then also him getting this responsibility. It's okay, he's avenging his friend. I can kind of get behind that, but I can't get behind him as a person because he's the guy who's just sitting here, fucking about to get yeeted by a train to make a point. What are you doing?
Yeah, he is written to be insufferable, and I'm fine with that. One, when he's supposed to be the kind of insufferable best friend, and two, if we got to see more of him after getting the radiant black hole from Nate. But because of where the issue cuts, where the volume rather cuts, and it's issue 5 and then this one shot, I feel like I'm left with oh god, Marshall's got the suit now.
Absolutely, that is the thing that just really is a little weird. But again, it depends on where they go with it. Looking at this volume, it's me a little bit. The last little thing I'll talk about, the content, I do also want to mention, I don't have a single art con to talk about, which is a huge thing for this volume. But I think the cop storyline was kind of just completely dropped. We had 2 issues of the cops being so central and oh, you gotta help us in this, or did they threaten us? And then they don't show up again.
Yeah, and they're small town cops.
Yeah.
So I agree that it was odd to focus hard on it and then pull away. If the cops were there to info dump, they should have info dumped in the train scene.
And then it's also not weird to have the whole note of, again, didn't think it was shown through the dialogue, but have the note of the 2 of them both leaving feeling like the cops threatened them. It was
I think that was more a Marshall thing than anything.
But then Nathan agreed. So I was that's where I kind of got Marshall very clearly was just kind of looking for stuff. So I was okay, that makes it. But then Nathan was yeah, maybe. And I was okay, are you doubting your friend or are you with him? I don't know. Anyway, small note there. Do you have any other criticisms, or can we start talking about the positive stuff that's so good?
I would love to talk about the positives because I think there's so many positives to this book. I would love to hop into what we alluded to earlier with the issue writing day. I went nuts for that. Every single time Kyle Higgins sits down with Nathan in front of his computer trying to write, it feels like a personal attack, and it's so great. I think that he did so well transferring the process of trying to make a story to a story, which is so cool. And the process of not being able to is so relatable.
Yes, no, it captures the right experience so well, and I do love this issue top to bottom, which is, and here's the best compliment I'm going to give this issue, is that this issue is phenomenal. It's great. I love it. It's my 3rd favorite issue out of the 6. So that's the huge compliment that I'm going to pay to it. But it
Mhm.
is so fun though, like the lines of writing existing in the gutters of
Yes.
the page. And let's start talking about uh Costa's art, because wow, man, Costa does a great job in making Radiant Black so cool. And within this, like, there is so much collaboration between writing and drawing in this issue in particular that you have
Mhm.
brought up that makes it work so well. You have like the scribbling like of the different like titles on the note page, which is so fun. And then you have all like the interesting like broken up between like, okay, here's full text and here's images and
Mhm.
here's this like merging of styles and of mediums. So it's
Yeah.
really cool in that sense.
Loved that. I also think that the art is really, not to kind of steal your bag here, but is really great at conveying the tone of the book. Like,
Beat me to the
yeah,
line.
Nathan dies, well, goes into a coma,
It's
uh, but gets yeeted. Um, but the tone of it isn't, like, it's not violent. It's very heart-wrenching, and we'll get to that in a second, I'm sure. But there's still, with Costa's art, this almost, and I'm going to say this as a complete compliment, almost like a kind of cartoon style to it.
yeah.
Like, it's not super, shadow heavy. It's not like edgy art. It's almost like, and again, I mean this in the best way I want to say, it's almost like reading a webtoon where it's like, this is kind of lighter art, to bring a lighter tone to this, as it kind of captures that uh, Saturday morning cartoon energy.
I don't know why you would imply a webtoon being maybe an insult in the coming
I suppose
written.
there's
So
a low barrier to entry with
but,
webtoons,
but
which I think can hurt some
janitor
people.
hero. But
Read Janitor Hero.
but I was actually going to push back when you said it wasn't violent until you finished your point, and I was like, you know what, you're right, because it's not violent, but it is actiony. And
It is
always
actually.
cartoony is perfect because it does. It has that, you've mentioned a couple times. It has that Saturday morning cartoon vibe, but the tone's a little more serious than that. But in terms of like the flow and the way that the action works, it's very much like
Mhm.
people just go flying. They hit
Oh,
walls.
yeah.
They hit cars. It doesn't really hurt the way that it would in a lot of indie books where it's like, no, you're on
Until
here. But that's
until the building falls. And I think it's also important to point out in this conversation about the art style that issue 5 is also a different artist.
who did a
They switch
job,
over to Eduardo Ferragoto after that point. Uh,
who emulated the style so well. Like it's hard to even clock the change there. Issue 6 is very clearly completely separate, and LaFonte did
oh
a
yeah, it's supposed to
job.
be.
We'll talk about issue 6 at some point because that's my favorite issue. But yeah, no, it's seamless. Issue 4 to 5 is seamless. Honestly, I give Ferragato, I believe,
Yeah.
so much credit for that, for picking up the incredible action, for picking up the incredible like way that the energy looks and the motion of people. I feel
Mhm.
like people keep crashing. Like there's like there's like an energy stream. They keep crashing into the ground. I feel like that happens all the
Oh
time in
yeah.
the book, and it's great.
There's
People
so
don't
many like kaboom moments.
yeah, and it's so fun and it's
Mhm.
so great. And there's not an artist in these 6 issues that didn't do it really freaking well.
Agreed. And I kind of want to point us towards issue 6. Uh, but before we do that, because I think that'll be where we wrap up, I want us to just take a pit stop, talk about the death of Nathan Burnett.
Please. I think it's the best scene in the book. It
Mhm.
doesn't even come in my favorite issue, which is really fun. But it is because it's because of how it's built up, both from an art and a writing perspective. It's built up like that moment that happens in every single superhero book where it's like, here's the hero sacrificing himself. In 2 pages, he's going to be fine. Like, here's this big emotional, you can't do this. You can't take this risk. No, I'm staying. No, boom, I'm shooting you away. I'm taking the blow. I'm going to be fine in 2 pages, though, so none of this matters. But then, shit, he's not fine.
Yeah.
And that
And
stakes immediately legitimized for the entire series. Like, you've just hit it right there.
I think that the break between issue 4 and 5 is so important in that, because we see Marshall take on the black hole. Then we cut to the like incredibly raw, real emotions of Marshall, who, again, was kind of written not to be super well liked, as he's dealing with the what he sees as the death of his best friend and what very well may be the death of his best friend. So we are not given that kind of superhero moment of, oh, he's gonna get back up.
Absolutely. And like also just the way that Nathan is illustrated when he's like comatose or like dead on the ground covered in dirt and whatever. Perfect chef's kiss.
So good.
Um but the transition from like I don't even know what to call it, like this dreamscape that they exist in where they talk to
Oh
like
my gosh.
they're
The
like
art in that is
kind of like
so
the Blue Beetle
spectacular.
scare type thing
Yeah.
where like you talk to your attached
Mhm.
being or whatever. Like the transition of Nathan being there, then we go to him being dead, it coming out again. I know he's not dead, but
Yeah.
then Marshall grabs it and it shifts, and now he's there and he's asked the same
Oh.
question, but he says yes. He says yes, I will kill Radiant Red,
Mhm.
and it's like, or he will kill the like. It's just so good. It's so
And
good.
as a final thing to touch on before jumping into issue 6, because I know you have so many thoughts about
I
that.
have so many
I
thoughts.
love the breadcrumbs for characterization. Like from the get-go, we get that Nathan, he thinks about stealing the money, but he doesn't. He is a good guy. He's trying to get his friend off the train tracks. He shows time and time again that he is kind of this superhero out of the costume
Yeah,
in a way where it's like, yeah, he is, pure of heart, or whatever we want to call it. Whereas Marshall is from the get-go like, oh, if I won the lottery, I would buy a yacht. Uh,
yeah.
or that type of thing. Like if I got the suit, I would have stolen money, or I would have
Yeah,
found a
yeah.
way to get
He
rich.
says like you gave back all the bank amount, and it's funny because even like because there is the moment of like Nathan getting $200 or whatever there that I was like,
Mhm.
actually, like, is he lying to his father? Did he steal $200 from the money that he gave back? But then you find out no. I'm like, okay, I'm really vibing with this character.
And
Like,
his face when he's considering stealing the money, amazing. Like with that kind of blank slate, it's a almost Spider-Man style expressiveness where we just get the eyes to get all of that emotion, and it's done so well. But we even get those breadcrumbs with Radiant Red as a transition because
yes,
we know that she's
uh,
stealing from banks, and
Sa-
it's not something that I notice at first. Sorry, what?
Satami is her name, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, Satomi. Um, uh, she is stealing from banks, and at first you're like, ah, yes, villain. She's red. She's stealing from banks. Of course, that's our villain. But something that I didn't like kind of take in or process until we get the reveal that she's, you know, a, for lack of a better word, like a person. Like she is a person under the mask who is like has a rich personal life and her own motivations. Like we see that when she decides not to keep pounding on Marshall, and then
Yeah,
Marshall is able to blast her back. Um, I didn't notice until then where I'm like, oh man, she like wasn't killing people when stealing from the bank. She wasn't ever endangering people. Like she was stealing money. She was never being like a villain.
yeah. And just quickly, like I want to ask you because I feel like it's such a success of the art. I don't know if maybe I was just weird, but when the mask cracked, I felt like I could actually tell that it was a woman then. Like I don't know if that was just me, but I immediately
Are
when it
you talking
cracked,
about the mask crack in
yeah,
issue 4 or
yeah, yeah,
4? Um, I will say I don't know that I can speak too well to this here since uh I read it for the first time like a year or two ago. But I remember thinking, at least I think I do, because I remember thinking it was like a kid. I was like, oh, this is like a teenager who
got
got this power.
it was definitely that
Which,
like
art
yeah.
wise kind of falls into
But
the
I
same.
thought that was so effective because I went, wow, it's a woman, and then I went, how the hell did I realize it was a woman? Because I literally didn't question myself. I'm like, dude,
Mhm.
it's like you seeing like a tenth of their face, dude. You
Yeah,
don't know it's a woman, and then we got there, and I was like, oh no, that's good art. That's good
right? And I
art.
love how they the bait and switch with that the like twist of that essentially with them being like, oh, she brings up this matter and it kind of builds out her body. So it's not like we see that in her masked form at all because she's drawn just like any other male superhero.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And let's get to issue 6 because I really do
Yes.
want to talk about it. It's my favorite issue of the book. We get to see Dario Lafuente's art, probably butchering the pronunciation. Phenomenal. It's always an art style that when I first see it, I go, I don't really love this. You know, it's like this basic flat art style. But then once the emotion starts being conveyed, once the motion
Mhm.
starts being conveyed, once the story continues, you go, no, this artist knows what the fuck they're doing.
Oh
Because
yeah.
this book, man, this is a masterclass in one shot writing. by the way.
Hmm.
I already care about Satomi more
Yeah.
than any other character in the book. Like, it is so good, so effective. It's complex relationship writing where it's like, yeah, obviously this dude fucked up, man, and he's an ass to her at one point, but like there's still it's a complex relationship that we're
Oh
seeing
yeah.
factored into, and it lends so much to who this character is. There's the moment of like her hair covering like half her face and her eye wide open in bed.
Yeah.
Holy! I don't think that page has. Oh, it has one dialogue bubble. I'm looking. I found it. All right, sorry about that. We had a few technical difficulties there, but the point that I was making when I got cut off was just that issue 6 on all fronts really delivers a great one shot standing alone. Um, so I guess we can get into our reviews then. And yeah, uh,
Absolutely. Yeah, let's jump into our ratings. You want to go first?
yeah, sure. I'm gonna give this an 8 out of 10. I think this is a very good series. Like I said, didn't reinvent the wheel, so it's not like some sort of bold new take on anything, but it is just a rock solid wheel that is really, really good at what it's doing. So I think an 8 out of 10 is a very fair place for it to fall for me, and I could definitely see the series in the future moving up with subsequent issues. On my top 10 list, this is going to slot underneath Noctera. Like them both a lot, but this will be number 2 underneath Noctera.
That's totally fair. I came into this prepared to give it a 7.5, but I think that our discussion really invigorated me. It just reminded me of why I got so excited to reread it. Um, so yeah, I'm gonna sit there with an 8 alongside you.
Right.
Little
We're in
twin
agreement. For
reviews
like the
there.
first time ever on a book. Huge win.
Huge
All right.
win. But yeah, it's gonna go right below Noctera for me as well. And I think it's gonna be a pretty consistent top of the charts book for me. It's very up my alley. It's got my name on it. Not
Great.
literally.
No, no, you're not that good.
No.
What? let's move on to the creator corner where I'll try not to insult Katie.
And here we are in the creator corner where we talk about what it's like to be a writer, what it's like to work on books, work with clients, what it's like to be a contributor in the comic space. Jay, how you doing?
I'm good. I'm very excited for this. This is always fun. This is the one part that I have no idea what to expect because you kind of throw it at me and I have to think on the spot of what I'm gonna say about uh, very interesting topics.
Yeah,
And usually I
yeah.
don't have much,
I
you know.
almost spoiled it this week because I got very enthused about a Mark Wade interview that touched on the topic that I wanted to talk about here. So I immediately was like, no, don't actually click that link. Watch it after we record.
Which is very tough because I love me a good Mark Wade interview. And I had another friend send me the interview too and be like, you gotta listen to this Mark Wade interview. And I'm like, I will, but I'm not allowed to yet.
Well, we better hop into it then before he clicks on the link and just watches it in the background. Today
Yeah,
we're going
yeah.
to talk about cast size. This is something that I have a lot of thoughts about and that I was excited to talk about this week, knowing that Radiant Black is pretty contained, whereas our favorite of the polls, Teen Titans, is very broad.
Mm.
So, Jay, single character on an island with a volleyball or team up book?
This is a great question because I'm torn on. I tend to do very small casts. I like the Trinity theory of like just a 3
Mhm.
character group that kind of go through things. I like rotating supporting characters. I feel like once you have like a set group of supporting characters, it's that can get just turned into a big cast. So I like having characters who kind of bumble their way through different places. So you
Mhm.
get different supporting characters. So you get kind of that bigger world feel while still focusing on only a few characters. But then there's things I've done with really big casts. Like Jenner here didn't quite get there, but I had written 11 scripts, of which 5 came out. It got huge by the end of those 11 scripts because it
Mhm.
was in a school. And when you're in a school, it's so easy to just go, here's another character, here's another character, here's another character. And that becomes really tough to juggle the way I was doing completely separate plot lines in like every single chapter with different characters. So I think I like to keep it small, but I feel like the creatives who can make it big and still make it good and focused, that's like the peak. That's the best.
Yeah, and I think at the top of the game of that is Mark Wade. We
Yeah.
read a good chunk
Except for
of his Justice League of America's JLA run. Uh, what are some
Best team.
things that you think that he did really well in those books to accommodate the big cast, the entire Justice League, all seven?
Okay, there's a few things. The first thing is shifting focus.
Mhm.
Different story arcs had different characters pushed to the forefront, and then you kind of pull back. But you don't forget about the characters that aren't in the forefront, and that's really difficult. Um, the other thing is usefulness. Everybody has to be useful.
Mhm.
You know, everybody's power, everybody's specialties have to matter in a way that makes sense, not in, here's this random inserted thing so that, the hacker character can hack something, this is why you don't write hacker characters. Not very cinematic, not very interesting. People don't like it. Don't do it. And then the third thing is distinctive personalities, because when
Mhm.
a character fades in the background, it's even more easy to have the lines become author voice instead of character voice. I know I've done it there where these characters that aren't very focused on, I'm literally just changing the name on certain lines because I'm like, this character didn't speak enough, so now they get this line that needs to be said. I'm like, but then their voice isn't there. So that's the other big thing, is distinctive voice needs to be there.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right with that. An example of it being a pretty apt example for comparing to Mark Waid is when we read Justice League Endless Winter, and we both felt that Batman just could have been sliced out every page that he was on. He wasn't important to the plot. He wasn't, adding to anyone's characterization or anything. It was just like, all right, this isn't about Batman, so he's not even here. Whereas with Mark Waid, when it wasn't about those characters, they were still there and they still had a role.
Yeah, yeah. And talking about Endless Winter, Batman had one of those, like, quote unquote hacker moments, which is like, we need to show that he's useful. So here's a thing that he figured out, and you have no idea how that happened or what the hell got us there. But here, proof that he's useful and he actually needs to be here. And that's such a pitfall of writing big casts. And
Mhm.
I will fully admit that I'm scared of writing big casts at times, and I tend to try and keep my books very focused for that. Like, I like to create new characters in terms of, like, oh, look at this person who has these powers or whatever, but I'm very much, they pop in for this issue and then they're going to go away and do something well. Then I bring in a new character for the next issue, because focusing on, I think once you push past like 3 to 4 characters and a villain, once you start pushing beyond that into like 5, 6, 7, like, it gets really tough to juggle. That's why
Mhm.
Justice League books are so hit or miss. As a Green Lantern fan, huge Green Lantern fan, I am constantly sitting there. I complain to you all the time that Green Lantern is just nerfed or just useless in Justice League books. Acts completely differently, doesn't do anything useful. It's so hard in team books or in just big cast books in general.
And I think you're hitting on something there as well, where you have to look at how your characters balance with each other. Like with a trio, it's pretty easy to be like, we have the smart one, the hot one, and the strong one, or the smart one, the main character, and the strong one.
I
Um,
had to go
Look, as a Nightwing fan, got to go with the hot one. Um,
don't need
but
him buff.
but yeah, I think making sure that they are balanced in relation to each other so that they can each have their contribution is really important. I do want to kick it around to the other side of things. If you were tasked with writing a book that has
Yeah.
one character,
Yeah.
like I'm working on a horror script right now that
Yeah.
I'm toying around being like, all right, I want this to focus on one character, be a very close read on this
Yeah.
one character. Even then I
I'm
was
a,
like, okay, this is not enough. I gave her a dog. I'm like, there we go,
yeah.
an animal. In Castaway, the kind of iconic one person script, he has his volleyball.
Yeah.
What would you do in a situation where you're given just one character?
Oh man, I'm gonna give you maybe the best example of it. There's a few other characters, but literally on my T-shirt, read The Last Ronin. Like, you want one focused character, flashbacks with others, a few auxiliary characters, but really you're close on this one character going through a world who's lost everything. Turtles books in general, good way of looking at expanded cast. Tom Waltz, very good at doing that, having a lot of characters with distinctive voices. If you're looking at me and like, what am I doing in that world? It's throwing somebody into a new world. Well, I just finished. I just got the art back for Lost and Alone, which is an
Yes.
anthology story that I did. It has 3 characters total, but only one that speaks a language that we all speak. So it's one human character crashed on an alien planet. There's a monster, and he has a little cute animal friend. That is the cast. Super tight. And I feel like my world in there is it's focusing on the internality. It's
Mhm.
focusing on human emotions. I think that gets tougher the longer you go, But for this, which was 10 pages, I was just like, I'm gonna look at loneliness. I'm gonna look at finding a new world and not really knowing where you fit in, because that's something that's very personal to me, issues that I've had. And I think that when you look at that, you can basically do a character study about the loneliness of a character. And I think that has weight
Absolutely.
to it.
And I think you hit on something there as well with putting them in an unfamiliar situation. I
Yes.
recently read a very cute graphic novel called The Gigantic Beard That Was Evil. It's great. It's about a man whose beard just keeps growing, and it studies loneliness in a way that looks at the world that he is stuck in. And like you said, it really zeroes in on it's like completely his internal world and then the way that the external world is reacting to him. So either going very deep into who you have there and then using the world around them essentially as a character, even if you don't have, you know, someone for them to talk to.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then it's the thing of like, do you do a lot of captions? Do you do a book that's
Mhm.
mostly just dialogueless? Like the balance there is really tough when you don't have dialogue to carry.
Right.
Um,
Which is why I think that doing something like adding in a little alien bunny or adding in just a dog, or even to keep going back to Castaway, I've never even actually seen the movie. Adding in a volleyball,
that's
just
why I was
something
responding,
for
'cause I haven't seen it.
me
I
either. I
didn't
just know the Wilson.
just
Um,
throwing it around there.
but
Have fun.
having something for the character to bounce off of, uh,
Mhm.
you do need that, I think. Yeah.
Yes. And it's I mentioned that it's kind of about size, and like the size of the story you're telling really matters in that. But the other thing I'll say is like you kind of touched on it in the way the world reacts and the world and kind of acts as character. That's the other way. If you really want to focus on one, like using other characters as more of a mob force instead of as
Mhm.
an individual character can be very useful. Do like, a Superman thing with like newsreels being like, well, what impact does Superman have on the world? And you can focus on that character while also being like, he still lives in a world where there's still, you don't have to strand him on an island is what I'm saying to have a
Yeah.
close character study.
Well, I think that was a great insight into writing varying cast size. I think that's something that you really have to decide up front. And that's going to really decide what your book is about. Is it about the relationships between these characters or the relationship the character has with themselves or the world? Do you have any final thoughts to add for this creator corner?
I think we really I think we touched on it well there. I'm pretty happy with what we got out there, and basically I'll end off with this. If you have questions about writing cast size or comments or anything,
Mhm.
and you want to reach out to either one of us, please do. We're always up for a conversation about making comics or about comics we have made or others have made.
Absolutely.
Well, I think that's all the time we have for today.
We have to channel our inner Nathan and stare at a blinking cursor pretending to write.
Yep, and let's hope a building doesn't fall on one of us like it did to him. That'd be rough.
Yeah, if it doesn't, tune in next week where we pull Batman Off World #1, Titans #5, Plot Holes #4, and Giant Robot Hellboy #2.
I'm particularly excited for Giant Robot Hellboy #2.
I'm excited
That
for Giant Robot Hellboy #2 too.
great. And if you stick around for our back issue review next week, you're going to see us dive into the Dark Crisis event, looking at the main storyline, which is by Joshua Williamson and Daniel Sampere. Where will it rank on our top 10 lists?
And will one of those polls join Petrolhead #1 to earn our second official pull list rec?
If you want to find out, tune in next week. We'll see you then, Comic Geeks. Right.
What do you mean? How did you fuck it up already? We hadn't even started recording.